Welcome. I'm Asa Lanham, the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of Innovaro, and this is part 4 in our series on innovation for entrepreneurs. And in this section, we're actually going to get into what we refer to as the 12 magic slides. This first piece is going to give you an introduction and a bit of an overview, and then we'll have a series of sections kind of taking the slides one thing at a time. So let me talk a little bit about the process of actually, what you've got to do. Now, the 12 magic slides are pretty simple, but you've got to do some real work on doing some preparation. And in this, we're going to talk a little bit about that preparation and some of the introduction that you want to have before you actually start to talk to people. We're going to talk a little bit about what your key toolkit is that you can use to get your message across. We're going to take a look at one of those is the one-liner. And this is very important, and it's not a tagline, so don't think of it in that way. Your elevator pitch. Now, we touched on the elevator pitch before, but in this case, we're really going to get into a little bit in terms of some examples and what you do. And then what's the story you have to tell? And a lot of things don't talk about the story. And I'm not talking about the story of your company. I'm talking about the story that goes along with why you're working on this problem, what you're solving. And then the last part is we're going to talk about your title slide, which seems pretty easy, and it is. That's why we put it in this. And then the overview of what the actual 12 magic slides are. So let's get into it and talk about the 12 magic slides to start with. And those slides are pretty simple. But what they do is they represent the content and flow and the message that you're trying to give. But equally so, it's what the investor is used to seeing or hearing. That's why it's important to do that. You can do your own thing, but it's easier if you're talking to investors in the terms of things that they know and they deal with. Right? Now, the slides serve as a proxy for the business. They're going to get legs, they're going to get passed around, but they're not something to hide behind or to persuade the investor. So these should be the things that represent you, that represent your team, that represent the business and what you're trying to do. So people can look at them, can grasp them, can learn from them, but also can then talk with you about them to really understand more. They should focus your communications on the most important pieces, right? It's the who, what, when, where, why, and how of your business. It's the key things. If you can't get good, clear 12 magic slides, then you don't have a good, clear picture of what you're doing, right? But it also then, along with that, demonstrates your understanding of the business and how thoughtful and rational you are. And some of these seem pretty obvious, but when you get into them and start trying to do them, it makes you really stop and step back and think. And we'll talk about a couple of those later on. But the other part is that it really gets you the internal champion. If you can use these 12 slides and get your message across and bring your enthusiasm, then someone can pick this up easily and go speak on your behalf, and we'll get you that second meeting or to due diligence, which is where you really want to go. Right? So from a preparation standpoint, what you're going to really do is develop a few communications tools that are going to set up and guide the creation of the 12 magic slides. Why? Well, the answer to that is from preparation. It immediately positions your company at the very beginning of the presentation. There's a couple of things that are important. It pulls the audience in, right, and gets them to want to hear more about what you have to say. And it signals to the audience that you know your business, that you know what you're talking about. You're not all over the map. Where that's really right at the beginning. It's either during the title slide or slide 1 that this information goes in. And I will tell you from personal experience on both sides of the table, that when you go in to have these meetings, you've got somewhere around 2 slides or 10 words to get people's attention. The meeting's over. I mean, I've always said it's the first 7 minutes. If you don't have them after 7 minutes, you either don't have them at all, or they're going to start to do things like look down at their lap because they're doing email with their thumbs, or they're going to say, look, I've got a call I've got to take, but I'll be right back, and they're never coming back. So if you don't grab them, if you don't capture them, if you don't get them engaged and interested, that's not going to happen. And this messaging is a key part of that, right? Your toolkit that you're really going to use here is a one-liner. And the one-liner is not a tagline. It's about a 5 to 10 word line that really crisply articulates your business. And that's going to go in the title slide under your company name and logo. You want that right up front. So you better figure out what your one-liner is, right? The second one is your elevator pitch. And your elevator pitch is really those 2 to 3 sentences that define the market and the customer and the problem and solution and why it's unique. And ideally you want to place that on your very first slide or in very succinct bullets with a graphic that really illustrates the point. So you've got to get that out there very fast. That's what tells them the whole story in a couple sentences and gets them interested, right? And then there's the story. And this is not the story of your business. It's not the story of stuff. This is all about a true event that establishes yourself and your team's deep and personal understanding of the customer and connection. The best you can have, you talk about why you're working on this problem because it was one you had, and when you talk to others, a lot of other people had it as well. And you can either use that as a voiceover, either during the title slide or slide one. You don't have to write it down, but you really want to talk about it, right? And the story is why this is meaningful to you, right? The one-liner, let's talk about that a little bit. One-liner is not a tagline. It's not those kinds of things that they're going to have as a tagline. When you think of the one-liner for ourselves, our one-liner is that we help organizations innovate and grow. Right, that's what we do. Right, and so your framework, there's a couple different ways you can talk about the company. It establishes customers and to be able to do something. It's what you do in the marketplace in your business, and some examples are with Cisco, we network networks, and right, and Google's the world information in one click, Apple the computer for everybody else. Right, so those are one-liners that people get, that they understand. Right. Your elevator pitch, that's the second key part. And in your elevator pitch, what you want to do is very quickly establish the market that you're in, right? The urgent problem that you're solving. A non-urgent problem people don't spend money on. So that's the one you've really got to know, because at the end of the day, if people like what you say but won't spend money on it, you don't have a business, right? And then you got to talk about the size of the opportunity. And we're going to talk about this a lot more in the 12 Magic Slides, because size of the opportunity has got all kinds of issues around market. It's total market, it's available market, it's target market, it's whether you're taking it from competition, whether it's unserved market, all of those kinds of things. And you really want to be very, very clear on what that is. And that can be very difficult to get to sometimes when you're trying to size things, right? And then, why are you going to win? What makes you different? What are the barriers to entry for others? How do you get and maintain an unfair competitive advantage? And not too long ago, there was a fairly brisk discussion about someone that said, hey, look, your job as a business is to get an unfair advantage. And everybody's going, oh, no, it shouldn't be unfair. And the answer is, yes, it should be. You want an advantage that you have and maintain on a permanent basis, right? And then last but not least, what validation do you have from customers or other investors and things that says, hey, yeah, this is real, right? So to give you an example of that, this is hypotheticals. It's Diamond develops proprietary thin film diamond products and equipment that dramatically improve heat dissipation on microprocessors, solving one of the highest priority pain points in the industry. Now, that tells very much what it does, how it does, and that stuff. It doesn't talk about market size, right? Second part of it says, we address growing markets that will exceed 1.5 billion in 2006 and will become the dominant supplier with the best team with most comprehensive patent position. So you can see these are very simple statements, but they're very powerful. I mean, it tells a lot in these few things. It talks, Intel's our large current investor, actively engaged with the top target customers. So this elevator pitch is 2 bullets, about 5 sentences, and gives everybody what they need to know to understand where you're going with these things. Right? So let's talk about the story. We touched on the story, before, and the story is important that it needs to be personal and compelling and memorable, right? And it could be, for example, I helped work with a firm that was getting started in security. And the people that were actually working on security were working on authentication. The reason they were working on authentication, they'd all had their identities stolen at least once, right? And what they'd gone through to resolve that issue was pretty serious, right? So they actually had evidence and an anecdote that proved why that story was compelling. And you could tell it over and over again to people, and it was always meaningful and it was always useful. So what you're really looking for is you're looking for situations of really ugly moments or unexpected delights. Right? And here you got the one, there's a car upside down with the word sorry on it. How did it get there? How do you prevent that? What do you do about it? Or there you are with one fish, with a lot of others, and suddenly you have a bowl and space all to yourself. So that's the kind of things you want, where you're either delighted or frustrated, and you're doing something with that or about that, right? You want to talk about scenarios, right, that have occurred in your career that inspire you and the company to create the solution. It could be, I travel a lot, so the things I see are, what's it take to get through an airport? How difficult is it? With screenings and everything else, and how would you go about solving that problem? And what could you do to make that more efficient and more effective? Right? It's like getting on an airplane and finding all the overhead bins are full, right? How do you solve that problem? And then the key one, if you also can't talk about, are the circumstances, the instances where you either designed or implemented a solution, or something similar, only to find that key execution pieces were missing, right? So you had some experience in coming at it and found the pieces that are missing, and you're smarter and you know better, right? So that's your story. It's a story about why and what, and it's meaningful to you, right? When you get into the session, you want to introduce your team, right? And we talked in one of the other sessions about who should be there and who shouldn't. Team introductions ought to take 30 seconds or less. Save the team detail for later in the presentation because there'll be a slide all about that. One of the things you want to do here as you have this introduction is you do want to have common links that you can mention. These could be common links among the team. For example, so-and-so and I worked together at these 3 different companies for almost 15 years. Or, this person because he's worked with one of your other people, right? So it's relevant contacts and referrals. It helps to build those links, right? And those common links are very, very important in establishing your credentials, your bona fides, for want of a better term, that you really are bona fide in terms of what you're doing and you're real, right? Then the key slide out of this is really your title slide. And the title slide is very simple. It's the name of your firm, the date, who's the investor you're talking to, any appropriate graphics, if you've got a logo or something like that, your one-liner, and one of the things that's optional is how much money you're looking for in a particular round of financing. Some people like to put it there, some people don't. All right, I'm kind of a fan of put it up front, then put it at the back. It tells them what you're there for, and tells them why you were there. So let's take a look at one of those very simply. This is one that was put together for a company in Acme, of course. Everyone knows that with Wile E. Coyote. But this Acme happened to be revolutionizing the authentication market with voice. So it tells you what they do, right? It tells you it's April of 2013 and that they're seeking $5 million. So you know the name of the company, you see their logo, you've got their tagline, you know what the date is, and you know who they're seeking the money from. Now, we didn't put the people they're talking to here because it wasn't appropriate to name a group here at this point in time. So then we got the 12 magic slides, and here's where you get into the rest of it. You've got the overview, you've got your problem, your solution, what's the opportunity in market size, tell them about your technology and product, again, what's your differentiation and sustainable competitive advantage, competition. And if you tell me you don't have any competition, I'm going to tell you don't have a product, right? Because if nobody's spending money to solve the problem, then it's not a problem, right? Go-to-market strategy. This is how you're going to enter the market, how you're going to grow, what are you going to do. Your financial roadmap, where are you today, what do you need, where are you going to go, how are you going to spend it. What's your team? Why is this team the right one to back? Current status was where are we today, what have we done, and where are we going? And then your summary slide, which really comes back and says why you really should invest in us. And what we're going to do is we'll take a look at each one of those as a short, separate presentation to go through to focus you on getting those things done. And I heartily recommend that as you go through this, if you take a look at each one of those, stop afterwards, and if you're working on one, work on yours. Get yours to the level it should be before you go on to the next. Right? So I want to thank you very much for listening. That's really all there is to cover on this one, and we look forward to seeing you again in our first section when we talk about the overview slide. Goodbye.